Shining bright lotus.
Greetings. Welcome. It's good to be with all of you today, and I'm honored to share on two topics very dear to my heart. And as I reflect on this journey, I'm feeling deep gratitude and appreciation for each of you. You've all been my teachers, dear friends, mentors, and I appreciate your support and love and care all along this journey. So thank you. Yeah, and so the talk today will be on Daishizen and Stewarding the Earth. Daishizen, nature connection, and my favorite precept 10, Steward the Earth. And as I reflected on this topic, I thought about the flower sermon, which came to mind that I'm sure you're all familiar with. And, you know, in this sermon, in this story, Buddha was giving a sermon to his Sangha, his people. And as he began, no words, he just sat there. And how much time went by? Maybe 30 minutes, hour, who knows? And eventually, he just held up a flower, and the other members in the Sangha were confused. They didn't quite understand that. But it was Mahakassapa that understood and smiled, and because he understood and he got the transmission. And so and I was thinking about the symbolism in that, many different thoughts, direct transmission from master to teacher, direct experience beyond words, and why a flower chose that piece of nature. Maybe it's innate beauty, impermanence, that we are one, non-discrimination. And as I reflected on that, I was reminded of the quote, and as I thought about nature and stewarding the earth, the quote was, "To like a flower is to pick it, but to love a flower is to water it daily and help it grow." And so with Daishizen, it's a Japanese term for great nature, and it signifies a profound connection with an appreciation with the natural world. It goes beyond simply viewing nature as a backdrop and embraces a philosophy that emphasizes living in harmony with the natural world and understanding its inherent wisdom. And it was a word that came to me as I was looking for something to describe this deep appreciation I've had for nature. And it's really recently that I felt this connection, about 10 years ago. And as I mentioned with some of you, it was when I had gone through a Vision Quest process in 2015. And at that time, in my life, I was wanting to let go of things that no longer served, heal some wounds, and just step into the man I wanted to be. And it was a 6-month process, which culminated in being on the mountain alone for 4 days. No distractions, no cell phones, no one around, no food for 4 days, just water. And I was afraid. Could I do it? Could I get through this? How was it going to be without the distractions, without food? And so I went through, and there was a lot of time to meditate. At times it felt like too much time, and learning how to be with myself. But to talk about the nature piece, one of the things that happened on that 4 days, the community writes these prayer cards for those who go out. And so it's when you're having a hard time out there, and need a little bit of encouragement. So at a certain time, I was having a rough time, and I reached in and I read those cards and felt those words. But it was one card in particular that said, Have you talked to a stone? Did you hug a tree? Did you see the same bird twice? And so I sat with that and felt a little silly hugging a tree, never done that, the tree hugger. And I decided to do that. So I put my arms around a tree. I was in this beautiful expanse up on a mountain, and I just felt that connection. I would talk to a stone. I watered flowers each day. I listened to the birds and the wind, and even some dragonflies danced right in front of me. And it's hard to put in words what I felt, but I had touched something deeper that I couldn't explain, and felt this passion that almost like I swore an oath that I would take care of nature. I felt that oneness. And I've since guided a few men on their quests. Women go out separately in this organization, just because I want to have them have the same experience. And I tell you, after 4 days, when they come back in, after being out there for 4 days, and I'm there with the other guides to give them a blessing, to look into their eyes and see, as Ekai would say, the primordial flame of something deeper that they touched, that oneness, just beyond words. And so I wanted to, reflecting on that experience and what I've learned from all of you in our Zen, I wanted to look at this through the Zen lens and witness and experience it. So a couple weeks ago, I went out to the LA Arboretum out here for a Shinrin Yoku, which is a forest bathing. And wonderful guide. So 35 strangers met at the Arboretum, and we had certain moments to meditations in nature. And we started off with the first one was a kinhin. And the instructions were, as we were going out, a saying from Thich Nhat Hanh, which is to walk as though you were kissing the earth. So as we all went out, we felt the earth on our feet, walked with that kiss, that kindness, and I watched the other people as they were having their experience. And I ended up walking into this tree, and I felt the leaves just like a slight tickle. I felt this giddiness, like when I tickle my little granddaughters, and they go back and forth with that, that giddiness. And then I realized, wow, I'm feeling this. So is this tree. We're feeling this together. And then I watched the others as they were having their experience, and we came back in to describe, and we sat in council, and we did this several times. But this first time it was, the guide said, describe your experience with one word. And it reminded me, as I listened to everybody speak, of our fifth koan. What are you like? What are we like at this depth of consciousness? And we use these descriptors to describe this quality of mind, the clear deep heart mind, the festive spa, fearless, eternal, silent, timeless, imperturbable, vast, empty, serene, peaceful, aware. And as I sat there, I listened to each person. I heard peaceful, I heard oneness, I heard connected, and several said clarity. And I was like, that is deep heart mind. They went out, had that connection, and dropped right into it. So I saw it manifest just in that brief moment of being out there. And then later we went out for another one, and the sun was going down, and this one was around a big tree, and that was all intertwined like spider webs. And she had mentioned, hey, when you go out, maybe put your hands on the tree, hug the tree, connect with it. She said, I've even licked trees. And so we all went, and I watched others as they were tending to the trees and connecting, and I'm holding this tree, and I thought to myself, well, I've hugged trees before, but I've never licked one. So I went in for a quick lick. But then it came over me, it felt intruding, disrespectful. And I was reminded of a native teaching that is, whenever you harvest sage or take something for nature, you ask permission first. you leave an offering. And so I did that. It reminded me of that, to have respect for this nature. It is not separate. We are one. And again, we went back in council, and I listened to everybody's take and what came up for them. And again, some were like, wow, I can't believe this is the end. It felt like time stopped, the timelessness. And so it gave me an appreciation. What I saw was sitting in council, the power of the three refuges are the three jewels, right? Sangha, right there, community, the Dharma, being out there, nature, the reflection, the teaching, and then these Buddhas, these awakened beings sharing their experience. So it was beautiful to see this connection as a mirror for them. And just to speak with that before I transition into the stewarding piece, I reflected on the Diamond Sutra. And I had difficulty with this sutra as we went through our process. But Thich Nhat Hanh's interpretation, or his review of it, spoke to me. And I'll read it as it relates. So the essence of the Diamond Sutra: an authentic bodhisattva is someone who embodies two elements: the great aspiration to bring all beings to the shore of liberation, and the wisdom of non-discrimination. The Diamond Sutra teaches us that there is no distinction between the one who saves and the living beings who are saved. This is a wonderful lesson for those who care about the environment. We realize we do not take care of it out of any moral righteousness, but because there's no distinction between us, the plants, animals, and other sentient beings on this planet. The wisdom of non-discrimination is the wisdom that breaks the barrier of individualism. We have to learn to look at the world in this way. The barrier between self and non-self is created by deluded mind. How do we remove that barrier and liberate ourselves from the notion of self? The Buddha advises us to meditate on the non-self nature of things. And so we know that human beings, we cannot survive without animals, plants, and minerals, but we continue to discriminate, destroy them, these elements of our environment. And it also goes on, when we walk in autumn and see the dead leaves, we might have a feeling of sadness. But if we look deeply, we see the leaves are only pretending to die. The true nature of a leaf goes beyond notions of birth and death, being and non-being, coming and going, permanence and annihilation. The leaf becomes the soil to later on become another leaf or a flower. We are like the leaf. We have to look deeply at being young, old, being born, dying, coming, going, being, non-being, so we can see that all these are just notions. And going and looking deeply into nature, seeing that oneness, looking deeply. As I think of stewarding, it's that place that we will steward that much better. And with the 10th precept, I hold sacred this planet Earth. I seek to understand nature's connection, celebrate my own interdependency, work toward achieving a lifestyle that gives more back to this earth than I take from it. And it was a great experience for me when I first entered and we went through our Cyber Sangha and we looked at stewarding the earth. And I remember with Ekkai, we were focusing on ways we could do that. Was looking at watching our carbon footprint. What can we do to limit our impact? And he had also said how he would go around and he would go pick up trash on his walks, and which I started incorporating. And I heard others. And then when others saw them picking up the trash, how they saw it impact others. And so what is a steward? It's someone who cares for, protects something, right? And who do we steward? Not only this earth, but all beings that share it with us. And I think of another native teaching, which is the 7 generations. that whatever we do, we need to think of 7 generations, our impacts, not just the next one, but 7 generations down the line. How will this affect them? Imagine if we really held to that ideal, the impact of that. And as I reflected on that, I was thinking about the impacts. There were two experiences I've had over this last year that brought me to think about the impact of when we are stewarding from a good place, our actions inspire others and instill in them to do the same as they see that kindness, their care, that concern. And I'll share these two experiences. One was, as some of you know, I feed a colony. I'm involved with trap, neuter, and return with cats. And so I've been feeding this colony for several years. And at night I was pulling up to feed my colony, and I see these young punks over here, and I'm already judging these guys. Oh, they're out here partying, and I need to feed my colony right here. And so I said, all right, well, just go over there. They're probably just partying. I don't know what they're doing, but I'll just go do this. And so I went over, I started feeding the cats, opening the cans. And then one of the guys came over and he said, wow, I see you feeding these cats here and there. I've seen you other times as well. So why are you doing that? And I said, well, I've been feeding these cats for a while. I care about animals, and they're hungry, and I've been watching out for them. And he said, wow, I really appreciate that. That's kind of you. And it just sparked this whole conversation like, yeah, I like cats. And his friends like, yeah, I have a cat. And all these, we had this long conversation. And what it did for me is I just saw this compassionate, caring heart in these youngsters, already there, past my judgments of what they were doing and this and that. And it was a two-way street where I think they needed to see someone being kind and caring for something. And they restored my faith in youth, because I was able to see, and they were sharing me about what they do in their own lives. And so it was really special. And then the last one was, I'll share, was this last year, we went on a family trip to Oregon, and there were 14 of us. And this particular day, we went to the Japanese Zen garden in Portland. And we were walking around these beautiful grounds, and I was with my two granddaughters, Noah and Morrissey. Noah was 4 at the time, and Morrissey was 1, and she could just barely walk around, but she was doing okay. And then as we were walking the trails, Noah looked over at this slug, and I heard this, ew, it was this huge slug. They had these huge like banana slugs and other slugs. And I walked over and I said, oh yeah, it looks creepy. But then I said, let's look closer. Oh wow, look at the texture. You see the different colors. And we really got into looking at the beauty as well, not just the creepiness, but the beauty there. And she took that in. And as we continue to walk, there were these large snails, and they were right in the pathway that was getting a lot of traffic. So she saw me reach down, lift up this snail, and put it on out of the way on the other side of the trail, so it couldn't be stepped on. And she asked me, Grandpa, why are you doing that? I said, well, this snail, there's a lot of traffic here. Someone could step on him, and I don't want him to get hurt. And she said, oh, okay. And so as we continue to walk, I would hear this, Grandpa, Grandpa. And I go, yes, she said, snail. And so together we would get the snail, walk it over, put it out of the way and to the other side. And then the last one, she said, yeah, we're helping them because they're my friends. And I just thought, there it is, instilling a little seed of compassion and kindness, in the next generation. Just that random act we do inspires and instills in others. So I think that's an important aspect, at least for me, in stewarding the earth. And so I'll end with, as I reflected on both of these, nature connection and stewarding the earth and bringing them together, what came to me was the teaching of a mirror and a lantern. And I'll end with this saying that, to put that in words, was, it is to connect with and appreciate nature, but not to get stuck in the separateness, for that can lead to deluded mind, clinging, and attachment. Instead, we need to look deeper into it, nature, and see the mirror that connects us and reminds us of our true nature, that we are one. And it is from this place that we can best serve as stewards, where our actions are like lanterns shining a light on the path, touching and inspiring others. But like Fugen would say, don't take my word for it, experience it for yourself. So I will leave you with an invitation. This week, maybe some time, go out in nature, observe a flower, listen to a bird or the wind, talk to a stone, hug a tree. But remember, ask permission before you lick a tree. But thank you for listening, for being here. So grateful for all the teachings and what I continue to learn from each of you. Thank you.
Shining bright lotus.